The Super Nintendo is home to a wide range of classics, but of them all, Super Mario Kart is the first game in what can only be described as Nintendo's golden goose of video games. Of all the Nintendo games, the Mario Kart franchise stands out as being pretty much one of the top 5 best-selling games for every single Nintendo console. This is quite the achievement for a game that really boils down to driving around in a go-kart or a bike throwing stuff at each other as you race.
But hey, pretty much everyone has played one of these at some point, either alone in their rooms or at a friend's house. And given the relatability we all feel over these games, I thought it would be fun to go back and replay, well, all of them, I guess.
So if you're looking forward to a specific one of these games being covered, then make sure to get subscribed so you're around for when that video is released. But really, the memories for me are all over the place with this franchise. There's nothing quite like playing Mario Kart. The excessive anger I felt when getting hit with a blue shell and the joy of getting a first place finish just in the nick of time, just to name a few, are some of the best memories and experiences I've ever felt in gaming. I mean, I've played them all and had similar experiences with each one, aside from the first one. Released way back in 1992 or 93 for people like me, Super Mario Kart came out flying with tremendous success. And that success only kept coming and spawned the rest of the franchise that we have today. So it's a bit strange to me how this first game in the series actually nowadays has more of a reputation for being one of, if not the worst one of them all. At the time of writing this very sentence, I have yet to touch the darn game, but my predictions go like this. I think at least what ended up happening is that when the series moved from this 2.5D style to fully 3D, it represented an improvement so large that not only were the newer games just better and more fun to play than this old one, but they outright replaced the old style entirely. And with that, let's get into this. Starting off, Super Mario Kart has 3 cups to choose from in the beginning, with the special cup needing to be unlocked. We got 8 characters to choose from, separated into weight classes. Not that the game tells you this outright, but that's where the magical long-forgotten game manual comes in place. This thing is really nice looking and pretty much tells you all you need to know if you want to get into playing this or are just into old gaming stuff in general. I'll leave a link to the official PDF of the manual in the description. Now, before going into anything else, we have to talk about this game's graphical presentation. This is by far the biggest drawback this game has. This 2.5-ish look, if you even want to call it that, just doesn't look that nice at all. The characters look fine in game, but the maps being flat like this makes the game not only look bad, it strains your eyes more, given it's really difficult to see what's going on like this. And even after getting used to the look, it really holds this game back in my opinion. I would prefer a fully top-down view in my opinion, simply for the eye relief, but I get in the context of things, having anything that looked even remotely 3D was a huge selling point. But if you get past the graphics, what's the game like? My first session went a little like this. Oh god. This controls very weird. Oh no. Oh no, jeez, what is this slide? Oh! There we go, get the speed. Oh my actual god, this is hard AF. Shit! No! I started off pretty wondrous and excited, but I quickly learned that I was not that good at this at first. I tried my best going around the track and all, but as many probably did, I crashed and hit pretty much every wall. The TLDR is that Super Mario Kart works a little differently from the rest of the series. The control for one felt like they only really did what I wanted them to do some of the time. After playing a few races, I started getting better, crashing less and feeling a bit more in control. But even as I got better, I could never shake the unwieldy feel fully. It's like I'm 90% in control, with the eventual chance that the character decides to hit a wall against my will. But I can live with that. Super Mario Kart works a lot like Mario Kart 64 in a sense. You have to finish at least 4th in a race to move on to the next track. Fail and you have to do the race over again. You also have these coins on the ground that, just like in Mario Kart 8, boosts your top speed but also apparently shields you from spinning out in some cases. Every character also has a special item that only they can use when they're CPUs. You heard that right. Exclusive items for CPU use only. Ain't that crazy? That would never fly in Mario Kart today. And an even stranger thing is that the cups have 5 races instead of the usual 4 in every other game. Truthfully, the tracks themselves leave a lot to be desired. I get it had a lot to do with this being the first game and all, but did we really need a Mario Circuit 1, 2, 3, and even 4? I feel like I'm doing nothing but ranting here.
So, what are the positives here? I mean, given everything I've said so far, is the game complete trash or is it actually somewhat good?
The answer is yes, it's still a fun, solid game for the SNES, despite shortcomings here and there. While there are issues with the game, the core still feels like any other Mario Kart. I mean, there's not much to say other than you race and you throw shit at each other. As a first-generation game in the franchise, it's not surprising that this has issues, but they're pretty much all fixed in the next game. However, that's something we will take a look at next time, because we aren't done here yet. Just like in all other Mario Kart games, you pick difficulty based on the CC level. In this game, 50 and 100 is all you have to start off with. 150cc is also unlocked later, but even at 100cc, this game is actually rather difficult. Now I understand that a lot of what I'm about to say comes down to me being bad and not being used to this game as well as many others are. But really, the game is actually more difficult in more ways than one. Your own skill as the player certainly is a factor, but as in any Mario Kart, you need a bit of luck with the items for one. But this is the first Mario Kart that I know of that outright cheats sometimes. For example, playing this Bowser Castle map, I had to redo the race several times in order to actually beat Bowser. Why? For one, the level is outright challenging, with sharp corners and so on. But there's more than one time where these thwomps slam down. Now, for normal players, if you hit them, you stop right in your tracks. But upon redoing this race so many times, I saw this kind of bullshit happen over and over. Bowser outright went through the thwomps without slowing down an inch. And besides that, Bowser's CPU item, the lava ball, is an outright pain to deal with on this map, given they stay wherever he puts them, until someone collides with them. Now, I can live with a challenging map, but I really dislike stuff like the passing through walls and the exclusive items for CPUs. But even excluding the experience I had with that map, 100cc is challenging, given one mess up often means it's near impossible to catch up back into first place. Some might say this should be accepted as a SNES era difficulty thing, but I disagree. Just because a game is old doesn't mean it's immune to bad game design. I should know, given I've created games myself back in college. And before somebody asks, I really wanted to play a lot of battle mode here, but unfortunately I couldn't, because in this game it's only 2-player. So that will have to be a topic that we'll revisit in a later episode. Thankfully though, time trial is here and works pretty much the same way as it does in all other games. I know for one, I spent a lot of time here at least when attempting to master the controls of this game. And on a different note, I just want to mention how good the music is in this game. Pretty much all of the songs in this game are just feel-good AF. Aside from Bowser's Castle. I don't really like that one. I have trauma.
I want to be as honest as possible here. Super Mario Kart is a good game. It certainly was one of the best ways to start what would become one of the most successful video game franchises in history. However, as with anything, it has issues. Some minor and some major. So, would I actually recommend someone from today's day and age go back and play this? No.
While it's a good game, every single game afterwards surpassed this one fully. The only real reason to ever go back and play this today is if you have a genuine interest in gaming history and want to experience the beginning of it all. Otherwise, stick to the newer entries. So get subscribed and join me here next time as we take a look at Mario Kart 64. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you there. Stay safe. Mario Kart 64 is very often labeled as one of the best Mario Kart games by older fans. But why is this? Is there more than nostalgia backing these intense feelings that people have about this game? Perhaps the shift from the first Mario Kart to this fully 3D style has something to do with it. Today, I will attempt to answer all of those questions and more as it's time to take a look at Mario Kart 64. Released in 1996 in Japan and 1997 for everyone else, Mario Kart 64 came out relatively early in the N64's life and quickly made its mark on the gaming scene as a landmark multiplayer game, revolutionizing the genre as a whole. Eventually it became the second best-selling game for the N64, just behind Super Mario 64, which is a given. It was one of the launch titles and, kinda changed gaming forever fundamentally. So Mario Kart 64, eh? No point dragging things out more than they have to. This is a really amazing game, and as in comparison to Super Mario Kart, this marks my point of entry into the Mario Kart series. As such, it's one of my personal favorite childhood games, but to be fair, it's been a long while since I last played through the whole thing. Even so, this is one of those games I have my earliest memories of gaming with. Racing on these tracks just never seems to get old for me, and besides all of those iconic sound effects and music, it's permanently imprinted on my brain anyway. So let's get started. I hinted at this in the last video, but I really have to emphasize this. Mario Kart 64 is better than Super Mario Kart in every single way. It's one of those rare moments where a sequel to a game improves on everything from the old entry so hard that there really isn't much of a reason to go back and play the old one. So, what's new? The biggest change of all is that the game is finally in 3D, and oh wow, that makes a huge difference. No longer will your eyes be strained as you try your very best to see where the next turn in the track is. This single change fundamentally changed how the courses were designed going forward, now allowing the race to go up, down, and even in tunnels and so on. The item selection got a bit of an upgrade as well from the last game. The obtainable items in Super Mario Kart were the banana peel, the mushroom, the green and red shell, coins, a feather, a lightning bolt, a superstar, and Boo exclusive to the battle mode. In Mario Kart 64, you can now get your hands on the banana peel, a banana punch, green shells, red shells, triple green shells, triple red shells, mushrooms, triple mushrooms, fake item box, lightning bolts, spiny shell, golden mushroom, superstar, and Boo. In Super Mario Kart, the item selection was quite basic, consisting mainly of shells, bananas, and mushrooms. However, Mario Kart 64 expanded upon this foundation by introducing items like the golden mushroom, which allowed players to gain numerous speed boosts for a short period of time, and the fake item box, which could trick opponents into crashing. Additionally, letting Boo be used in the Grand Prix, which allowed players to steal items from opponents, added a new layer of strategy to the gameplay. These additions increased the overall complexity of item usages and added more variety to races, enhancing the overall experience of Mario Kart 64 compared to Super Mario Kart. Although there still are cases of red shells misfiring, which really freaking sucks. And then, what might just be the most important change for people like me is the controls. The Nintendo 64 introduced the world to the wonderful analog stick. And yeah, sure, it had a weird construction that eventually led all sticks to become very loose and all, but gosh darn it, I love this thing. Having it right there in the center of the N64 controller made it for a great feel that really hasn't been replicated at all, despite stuff like the GameCube and Switch Pro controllers being great in their own way. And the shape of this thing is something that turns a lot of people who never owned an N64 off. So let's talk about that. According to the manual, there are 3 different ways to hold the controller. Flip over to page 9 and you'll see the right position. This is by far the most commonly used one. The home position, that was a bit underutilized, although notably Kirby 64 used it. Then finally we have the left position, that really was never used in anything noteworthy that I can think of. And besides, it feels kinda cursed. Don't use this one. A rather small change as well is that 150cc is now unlocked by default, as well as the Special Cup. So make what you will of that. Although I have a hard time believing that anyone was actually begging to unlock 150cc in Super anyway. What some may be begging over though is the more characters, given the grand total for Mario Kart 64 is still 8. Basically the same roster as the first, with DK Jr. getting switched out for Donkey Kong and Koopa for my dear fat man Wario. Now, just as last time, all characters are separated into weight classes and all, but in reality most people, as far as I know, go with Toad, given he's the fastest and the lightest one. Oddly enough, that reminds me a lot of another certain overused character that we will have to talk about in a future video. But hey, let's get down to business and talk about the actual gameplay now. Mario Kart 64 feels substantially better than Super Mario Kart. How do I put this? It's like the game just feels more handleable. Handleable? I can handle the game better, okay? The controls themselves remain pretty much the same as they did in Super Mario Kart, which means you can still do everything you could do before, but now, given the whole 3D game world aspect, some crazy skips using the drift jump are possible. Now, I didn't talk about it much before, but if you time the acceleration just right at the start of a race, you can gain a boost of speed. Same goes for drifting for long enough. Although in this game, the drift boosting is a bit weird. In the later games, a spark of either red, blue, or even purple flames come out as you drift, indicating the level of boost you're about to get. But in this game, there's like letters that change colors and such. As a kid growing up without the manual for this game, I never understood this. Like, the fuck? N-E? What? Why? I guess it's imitating the in-game drifting sounds, but really? Whatever the case, the drift works a lot better than it did before. No longer randomly sending me into walls. And honestly, thank fucking God for that. Another new addition to this game is the ability to carry some items behind you as a shield of sorts. Basically just press and hold the item button. Some items like the banana bunch just stay behind you anyway, but it's a nice feature that still is around even today. Lastly, I want to touch upon the fact that you can kinda save yourself from spinning out in some cases. Like, there's no more coins in Mario Kart 64 to protect you or anything. Instead, whatever you're about to spin out, you know, when the kart starts to like wobble a bit, simply brake for a second and you'll avoid the full-on stop from spinning out. Do it right and you'll see a small musical note pop out in a speech bubble over the character's head. Now, I know I probably am missing a ton of small changes that only the most hardcore people would notice. So, if there's anything worth mentioning that you think I've missed, don't be afraid to drop a comment. And besides, be sure to like this video and subscribe if you're enjoying yourself so far. But let's get back to the actual feel of the game. I don't know how to explain this well, but the game just flows nicely. No gimmicks, no weird stuff, no nothing. It really is a safe but very well executed Mario Kart. Everything just feels so good with this one, not to mention those nut-crushingly crisp sound effects. You can almost feel the impact. Then again, you can also hear it, given every character screams like crazy in this game. Toad, you alright? That's the second time this episode you've done that. Alright, besides Toad being Toad, let's take a look at some of the tracks. So for this section, I decided to give you all the one and only valid cup tier list that you should trust. First of all, we got the Mushroom Cup in S tier. All tracks are nice and really well balanced, as any first cup should be. I'll put the Star Cup in A tier, just barely outside of S due to me being salty AF over those penguins in Sherbert Land. The Special Cup is next, and it's gonna have to go in B tier because of Banshee Boardwalk. The rest of the tracks easily pass for A or even S tier in the case of Rainbow Road. Finally, the worst cup for me is the Flower Cup. Mario Raceway and Frappa Snowland easily pass for A tier, but geez, I really don't enjoy Toad's Turnpike, and especially not Choco Mountain. But all in all, the track list of Mario Kart 64 is easily A tier stuff. For those who actually care though, Banshee Boardwalk is boring, both in its design and its music. Toad's Turnpike is just not fun to play on. The controls aren't fine-tuned enough to comfortably drive on the road filled with cars. And then Choco Mountain is just ugly and a hassle to play on. Little story here, but during my time recording footage for this episode, this was the level I had to replay by far the most. Basically, the issue was a lot of crashing into walls and the level itself being really hard to drive on. Like any small bump into the side of a wall often led me to stopping fully. Anyway, enough about that, I want to talk about something I really couldn't last time, and that's, of course, the battle mode. The battle mode in Mario Kart 64 is somewhat simple, but really fun actually. It's a shame that there couldn't be any CPUs in the battle though, but oh well, I guess we would still have to wait a few more years for that to be a thing. Anyway, we got a nice selection of tracks here. Skyscraper, Double Deck, Block Fort, and Big Donut? I'm sorry? Has anyone on the team actually ever seen a donut before? Why are we over lava? But honestly, the main racing mode is one thing, but I feel like the battle mode is where the real multiplayer fun comes from in this game. Again, it is simple, but really freaking enjoyable. Although I suppose a lot of it comes down to sitting down with someone in real life, laughing as you play and screaming at the stuff that happens. You know, a lot of my time recording footage for this episode was spent just like that, split screen co-op. Makes you miss those days when that was the only option for multiplayer. But it is what it is. Mario Kart 64 was and still is one of those superb N64 games that pretty much everyone looks back at with fond memories. I understand it can feel a bit lackluster to many fans who grew up with the newer entries only, but I do hope that you can give this one an honest shot if you do decide to play it. Today, it's available on Switch Online if you have the expansion pack, otherwise your official options dwindle down to the Wii U's and Wii's that still have the game installed, or if you're a true retro fan, get a proper N64. Though be ready for some truly blurry picture quality unless you get some proper cables for that option. But optimizing video quality for old consoles is a topic for another video. There's something truly special with such a simple Mario Kart as 64. Get some friends together or do some online play exclusively with the Switch version. I promise you'll have way more fun than you probably expect. Plus, why not style a bit and hit yourself with a blue shell as I did here? Or why not do something completely different? Well, buckle up, because next time we face a whole new way to race. So get subscribed and join me here next time for Mario Kart Double Dash. Stay safe and thanks for watching. When I began planning things out for these Mario Kart videos, I knew from the start that there was one game in the series I looked forward to a whole lot more than the rest. And you may just ask me, why is that? Today, my aim is to get to the bottom of that. After what might have seemed like ages for you viewers, it's time to cover the first Mario Kart that really changed things up. So first came the pixelated Super Mario Kart, and then the first real 3D one, Mario Kart 64. What could possibly come next? Dual seats! Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how this happened, but I imagine a hot summer day at Nintendo went a little something like this.
What can we do to spice things up for the Dolphin Mario Kart? Inosuke, give me an idea. How about 2 seats instead of 1?
my god, that is genius. Now get back to work.
And that is pretty much my headcanon of what led to Mario Kart Double Dash. This was, as with every other Mario Kart, one of the best-selling games on its platform, this time being the Nintendo GameCube, aka the one console I love more than any other. Check out my old retrospective on it if you haven't already. So my plan here is to divide this video into certain sections, pretty much just like the last videos in this series, so feel free to skip around a bit if you really want to, but I advise watching this in full. Besides that, remember to follow me on Twitter or join the Discord group for a better chance of interacting with me personally and have the chance to affect these videos in a more direct way. And also, please hit that like and subscribe button for more awesome videos like this. And with that, let's finally take a look at the burning question. Why is Mario Kart Double Dash so special? Personally speaking, I think Mario Kart Double Dash isn't just good because it's different. It's like Mario Kart 64 already showed that being good at the basics is more than enough to make a great game. No, I think what makes Mario Kart Double Dash better than everything else is the customization options in this game. And you might be quick to note that Mario Kart 7 and 8 both have an incredible amount of parts to use in vehicle making, which is true and all, but this is entirely different. You see, in Mario Kart Double Dash, we finally got more than the standard 8 characters from before. Now up to 20 of these colorful bastards can be controlled. And the best thing is, you can mix them up however you want. Mario and Bowser, damn right. Luigi and Toad, what the hell? Wario and Donkey Kong, makes no sense, but let's go anyway. Now, as before, characters have weight class, and whatever happens to be your heaviest weight class is whatever vehicle you will be racing in. So it can look kinda funny seeing Baby Mario and Bowser in such a huge kart. But not only do we have all of these characters in different karts, there's actually more to it than just picking a character that you think looks cool. And that is the special items for each pair of characters. And before you say anything, no, the Super Mario Kart exclusive items don't count here since you couldn't even use them yourself. It was trash, I tell ya. Trash. All of these special items are interesting in their own way, even if some are less original than others, so to say. For one, Toad and Toadette's special item is the golden mushroom. Kinda rude keeping it just for them, to be honest. And then you have the likes of Wario and Waluigi, which just got a bomb that is kinda useless in my play at least. But the majority of them are cool, like Bowser and Bowser Jr., which have a mega huge shell that I swear I see almost every race at least once. Baby Mario and Baby Luigi have this huge chain jump that pulls on them like a bullet bill in the future games. And what might just be the best one of them isn't even a specific one at all. The two hidden characters, Petey Piranha and King Boo, have a bit of a different special. They each have a chance of getting any other character special, which makes them a lot of fun to play as, given you don't know what you might get. But then again, if you're some kind of speedrunner, you might just go for Toad anyway. But all of this pretty much just scratches the surface of what's so special about this game. Because what makes a Mario Kart game, and any other game, fun is of course more than anything based on how you play it. And you're gonna need to come in closer for this one. A little more. Alright. This game is freaking nuts! Mario Kart Double Dash has a very different feel from the rest of the games. Now on the surface it might not look like much, but man, this game is chaos, even more so than Wii, but we'll get to that later. So why is this? The most obvious and frankly biggest thing is of course having two of these guys to control for one kart. Now as you might imagine, having two of these characters with their own item slots can create quite the chaotic gameplay. And you'd be right. One of the best things about this game is mastering how and when to switch places between the characters you control, and as if that wasn't enough, if you feel brave, then playing multiplayer means that you can actually team up with two people at once in one kart. And if you're anything like me and my sister, it turns out horribly wrong, but at least we got a good laugh out of it. Having said that, even if you're playing alone or with others, the system itself is surprisingly deep, which makes the whole game a lot more fun for me to play, given I like when I gotta use this old brain of mine. And then we have the controls. On one hand, the controls fit the GameCube controller perfectly, with A for acceleration, B for brake, X and Y for items, L and R for drifting, and Z for switching characters. Bonus points for L and R given their analog triggers, which always makes for a more satisfying feel when drifting. Having said that, what about the physics? Well, it's hard to truly convey how the game feels, but sensitive and slippery come the closest for me. Now, if you've ever played a game where the slightest tilt of the control stick means your character turns in another direction extremely fast, then congrats, you've played pretty much 1/4 of Mario Kart Double Dash. It can be a real pain to try and maneuver yourself as you play this, especially for a beginner, but in defense of that, the drifting feels so incredibly good in Double Dash that it almost doesn't matter that the entire game feels like it's being played on ice. Now to be honest, there's not many personal stories I have to share, but more like experiences that I feel like most of you can relate to. Chaining up drifts, having the blue shell chase you around, and marveling at the bright colorful graphics all contribute to an experience that I can't quite ever forget. And honestly, I've always felt that the game that came after this had an unusually dull color palette anyway, so it only helps strengthen the identity of Double Dash. So the crazy amount of characters and combinations you can make, the special items, the physics, the controls, even the music, all of it combines into one of the most fast-paced and chaotic Mario Karts there is. And that's pretty cool in my book. Oh, and how could I forget? This is the first mainline Mario Kart that actually lets you come in 5th place and still continue. So yay, you can be bad now! But even so, for this video I decided to go ahead and beat the All Cup Tour for the first time in my life, which means playing through every single track in the whole game and basically getting 1st place every single time. And this was my reaction to doing that. Alright, just wanna include this in the video because this was a nightmare. This is me, you know, I guess beating the All-Star Cup in mirror mode. It was painful. Dude, I don't know how to. So, hope you enjoyed the rest of the video. Now, I mentioned it quickly before, but one of the absolute best feelings there is in this game is the drifting. And one of the reasons for that is that the drifting here is based upon how many times you flick the control stick back and forth rather than the actual time spent drifting. What this means is that there's a fine line of skill to master here. Skilled players can not only handle the ice-like physics, but also chain up boosts in order to get up to some very high speeds. And besides the actual function of the drifting, it just looks and feels very nice to do because of those wonderful analog L&R triggers. As mentioned a little before, I gotta give props to the music here as well. I mean, the music in these games have always been very nice and all, but man, Double Dash just knocks it out of the park here. Here, I'll even give you a few sneak peeks at some of my favorite songs. I promise it's not all nostalgia backing this up. Just a teeny tiny bit maybe. Well, whatever. It's about time I mention my general impressions of the stages in this game, because, believe it or not, I feel as if they have a distinctly different kind of design than other Mario Kart tracks. When I say the tracks feel different from other Mario Kart games, what do I mean? I mean, how many ways can you actually design a complicated circle in? Well, for one, have you noticed how freaking huge the characters are in comparison to the actual track? Now, this might be one of the things you don't immediately notice, but comparing this to basically any other Mario Kart shows just how weirdly huge you are in this game. What this ends up doing to the actual game then is making it so the tracks themselves feel a bit cramped, and this pretty much applies to any stage in the whole game. Given the massive size of the characters and I guess the smallness of the tracks, it feels like a traffic jam the second another kart is near you. And even beyond that, you gotta be really fucking precise with some of these hidden paths. Even more so than any other Mario Kart, I'd say. And why that is because the physics, as mentioned before, along with the tiny track sizes, makes it really easy to mess up even seemingly simple things like this. But look, aside from the whole tiny thing, these tracks are some of my favorites in the whole franchise. Wario Coliseum might just be my favorite one to play on, given it's kinda like one of those stunt race things you'd see on TV growing up. Or, I guess kinda like Pure on Xbox 360. No? Nobody? No, man, I can't be the only one who remembers Pure. So, if you catch my drift, pun entirely intended, Double Dash was the first time the series felt more like a stunt show kart racer than just plain old go-kart racing. And not surprisingly, this was awesome, and became the basis for how the later games were designed. I think it's cool seeing stuff like this, especially since the start of this whole stunt racing stuff could even be seen as early as in 64 in some places such as DK's Jungle Parkway. But stunt racing wasn't the only thing this game did well. No, it's that time again, time to talk about Battle Mode. Now you've heard everything about the game, how much I adore it, and how crazy it can be. But did you ever stop to think, what if we added bombs? A whole lot of them, actually. New and sadly exclusive to Double Dash, we have Bomb Bomb Blast and Shine Thief. Is what I would say until they both surprisingly returned in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. So hell yeah, I was about to make this whole section all depressingly sad over how I missed these modes, but they're back! So, that said, let's still go over them, starting with Shine Thief. This mode is kinda like a survival game, but also kinda not. All players compete in order to see who can hold on to the Shine Sprite until the shared timer runs out. So essentially that means one player can hold on to the Shine Sprite for 55 seconds, and the player who holds on to it for the last 5 seconds still win. It's worth noting that if you get hit while holding on to the Shine Sprite, you immediately drop it, and the timer stops as well. And because of that, this mode very easily turns hectic, given you mostly try and escape with your life the second you get the Shine Sprite. Kinda like a massive blow-up of the classic cat and mouse game. It's great! Now, the second new game is Bomb Bomb Blast. This is chaos in its truest form. This mode revolves around, and I kid you not, bombing the ever-living hell out of your opponents for as long as it takes in order to get the necessary amount of points to win. Sounds awesome, right? Each player needs 3 solid hits on their opponents to win, but the thing is, if you get hit yourself, you lose a point. So in some cases, the battles can be kinda dragged out, depending on how skilled all the players are with bombs. But fret not, because the simple fact that you can actually stack bombs in this mode means you can create a scene straight out of a Call of Duty game or something. And for the one person who actually wonders about this, yes, the tried and true balloon battle is still here, now and forever. In general, I found the battle mode of Double Dash to be by far the best one so far in these videos. But I guess only time will tell if that statement holds up later on. And speaking of time, I think it's about time we summarize this. Mario Kart Double Dash was and still is a blast to play and watch actually. Like, no joke, I actually spent a fair amount of time just watching my own footage back, wasting precious minutes cause I kinda just found it fun to see. Something about the art style, the colors, and especially the whole game's presentation just makes it so incredibly appealing. Now, is it any better than the last two entries? Yeah? This is an amazing little game that I urge you to try if you haven't. Even if you face issues at some point due to the physics, you'll more than likely just get used to it pretty fast. So I guess I answered my question from the beginning, didn't I? I now know why this is the Mario Kart I was looking forward to the most. But that said, having experienced this, I feel a bit worried about what's coming up next. Alright, yeah. So join me here next time for what might just be most people's favorite, and in some cases, first Mario Kart ever. Mario Kart Wii. And yes, I'm still doing the handhelds, but a little later, okay? So stay tuned, and thanks for watching. The year is 2006 and the GameCube was on its way out, as the successor, a small white little rectangle looking system I think you all know, came bursting onto the scene. Things were about to change big time. And with it came motion controls, something that took the world by storm on release, but today is seen as more of a gimmick to the broader gaming audience. Needless to say, the Wii is now close to being 20 years old and might just be some of y'all's first gaming console ever. And yes, that makes me feel very old. The Wii brought along some of the most fun and loved games in gaming history, and as with any Nintendo console, it brought its own spin on the Mario Kart franchise. Today I'll be going over the entire game from my perspective in a deep dive as usual. You can watch all the parts in the series in any order you want. So assuming you read the title of the video, it is my pleasure to welcome you back to the very next step in the Mario Kart Retrospective. Roll the intro! From the very first game up to Double Dash, the series evolved quite a bit, but naturally as the GameCube wasn't the best-selling Nintendo console, know what I mean? Its Mario Kart Double Dash had less players and fans than older Mario Karts. But as the Wii became a thing and just about everyone on Earth pretty much obsessed over it, naturally the sales went through the roof. So when it finally became time for the Wii Mario Kart, the expectations both from fans and higher-ups at Nintendo were through the roof. And long story short, Mario Kart Wii ended up following in the tradition of becoming one of the best-selling games for the console it was on, with 37 million freaking copies sold. And well, this time technically also being the best-selling standalone game of them all, given Wii Sports came as a pack-in title. So to be honest, that number itself is just effing mind-blowing to me. Like Jesus, every single Nintendo fan of 2008 and onward pretty much played this game. And for me and many others, this somehow still is our most played Mario Kart ever. I mean, from my own experience, this game never really died, even after the Wii successor came out. Somehow everyone who still had a dusty old Wii laying around always had a copy of Mario Kart Wii to boot. So naturally, that's what's gonna be played given everyone already knew how to play it. In a way, you could say Mario Kart Wii transcended the typical great game title and became truly mainstream. So summarized, yeah, Mario Kart Wii was a very big deal. Today the game lives on in people my age's hearts as we seemingly never shut up about how great this game was. That and the fact that there's a thriving modding community that not only keeps the games online playable, but also frequently adds new maps, cups, and in some cases characters. But today the focus won't be on mods or anything, just the plain old vanilla Mario Kart Wii, so sorry for that I guess. Although if the demand is there, I could take a look at the wildly popular CTGP. But I think that might just be enough for the prologue. Let's head in directly by talking about the new features introduced in Mario Kart Wii, starting things off with the most obvious thing, the introduction of the bikes. Now, with the bikes, there's a buttload of small differences, but the main ones are that drifting is a bit tighter generally, they also cannot perform the Super Mini Turbo, and they can do wheelies, which pretty much function like a speed boost they can perform whenever you want. And that might just sound a bit overpowered, don't you think? Well, that's because it was. From day one, everyone who played in Mario Kart Wii understood that bikes were by far the best type of vehicle because of that wheelie mainly. And as such, anyone who's actually skilled in Wii will almost always use a bike when it comes to shortcuts and such. But thankfully, the wheelie was removed when the bikes returned in Mario Kart 8. But you know what else we added? Motion controls! Oh god, the motion controls. And you know what that means? Grab the remote, grab the steering wheel, plop them together, twist to turn, shake to do tricks, shake to avoid power blocks. It's no understatement to say that the motion controls in Wii were a huge selling point and a very big part of what gave the game its identity in the early days. Even so much so that it was mostly Wii Sports and Mario Kart Wii that served as the de facto show-off games in discussions about why motion controls were so great. So, long story short, the motion controls in Mario Kart Wii very quickly became a force of habit for all of us players. And in my case, so much so, I had a hard time stopping myself from shaking the controller at each jump, even when playing Mario Kart 8. And of course, with this being the late 2000s, online multiplayer was starting to creep its way into more and more games, with this being no exception. And technically, online multiplayer was first seen in Mario Kart DS, but I think it's still significant to mention here, given it was the first home console Mario Kart to feature online play. And to be honest, it worked surprisingly well. Like really, after playing Super Smash Bros. Brawl online, one would expect this to be complete garbage too, but apparently not. So who would have thought that Mario Kart Wii's online was and still is somewhat more reliable than even modern Smash Bros. Games' online modes? And if that wasn't nice enough, one of the other more notable changes came in the form of upping the racer count from 8 to 12, utilizing the power of the Wii. So up to 2 players could play online in both normal races and in battle mode. And joining a lobby often meant spectating the other people finish their race first, then head into a menu where you could vote for any track in the whole game. This was a lot of fun! And while you had a rank in the form of a score known as a race rating, I don't think I ever really knew anyone that cared all that much about that. Then again, you could also get certain icons next to your name in the form of a Wii wheel either in white or gold, that or a few stars too. It's my understanding that people cared a lot more about these icons than they ever truly did about the score itself. I know I certainly did at least. Now even with all of the newfound power of the Wii, Mario Kart Wii to my eyes still looks kinda bad. And I'm sure most of it comes down to an art style and such, but I mean the game just looks a bit rough in places I think. Although we'll touch more on that a little later in the video, so make sure to stay until the end. The last new thing I want to mention here, besides slipstreaming being a thing now, and endless amounts of speedrun techniques and such, is the item balancing. And while this isn't an entirely new addition, so to say, the chaos that transpired due to the balancing most certainly is. Mario Kart Wii is what I would call the most chaotic Mario Kart in terms of items and item frequency. Now I'm not going to bore you with stats and whatnot about the actual item probability in comparison to the older games, but if that kind of thing interests you, I'll leave a link to the wiki page about this very thing in the description of the video. Anyhow, so we're all on the same page here. The actual new items in Wii are the Mega Mushroom, the Bullet Bill, the Blooper, the Power Block, and the Thundercloud. The Mega Mushroom is fine, it really only makes you big and also adds the ability to squish other players in the race, but is kinda useless in my play. The Bullet Bill is significantly better as it sort of replaces Baby Mario and Baby Luigi's chain jump from Double Dash. The Blooper covers the screen in ink for a while until you go on a speed boost, but to be honest, it is really only a hindrance unless you know all the maps inside out like I do. The Power Block, while menacing in the fact that it can make it so all players get hit, is totally useless when you realize you can just shake the controller to avoid the hit entirely. Then comes the Thundercloud. I hate this thing. It's like drawing a Joker in a card game. I mean, no one wants that crap. You see, when you get this item, you get this cloud over your head, which in turn also starts an invisible timer. In the time this cloud is over your head, you do get a speed boost, and for good reason. Bumping into anyone while having the cloud over you will result in the cloud switching over to the player being bumped into, but fail to bump into anyone and the timer running out will result in you getting hit by lightning. So that sucks. Oh, and a final thing I remembered that I think should be obvious, but I'll mention anyway is the fact that there's once again no more character-specific items such as in Double Dash. Do they hate fun? And I'm not sure whether or not to call this a new feature or so, but you can switch between automatic and manual transmission in the game. And what that boils down to is if you want to drift on your own to do turbos or have the game pretty much do it for you. So don't worry, there's no gear shifting or such here. But what is here is some tight gameplay. Whether or not you play with bikes or karts, motion or not, the controls feel a lot more natural and most notably less slippery than Double Dash. Not only does it help in general, but also for the accessibility factor for this game as well.
You see, with the Wii's major audience being families and in general young people at the time, making sure a game like this was easy to pick up and play was necessary. And as such, that's one of the reasons why I feel like this game is playing it safe in comparison to Double Dash. So while I would have liked the whole dual driver thing to stay around, it's easy to see why it was cut. But it's not all bad. Mario Kart Wii does expand upon one amazing part in Double Dash, and that of course is, as I mentioned last time, the whole stunt race aspect of the franchise, which brings us to the tracks. And in all honesty, these are some of the very best tracks the series has ever seen, with iconic tracks such as Maple Treeway, Coconut Mall, Mushroom Gorge, and of course, the Wii Rainbow Road. In today's world, just about everyone has played these tracks to death, and some, such as Coconut Mall, somehow even became a meme of sorts with that iconic music. So I'll say it again, these are some of the absolute best Mario Kart tracks ever. Something about the twists and turns, the environment, the feeling of progression, it all just feels very complete in a sense. There's very rarely any of those moments where you drive in a straight line with nothing happening here. And what I noticed made the biggest difference to achieve that feeling is the addition of ramps and half-pipes all over the place. But all of that wouldn't mean anything if it wasn't for the introduction of the trick system. Now I'm sure you know this by now, but shake that controller as you jump off a ramp or a half-pipe and you'll do a trick to get a small boost as you land. This is what I call addictive gameplay. I need to do these at every jump ever. Doing tricks not only feels fun, but is a natural way to strategize as you play, because going for a trick isn't always the best choice due to the way you approach the half-pipes. Indeed, it is possible to go at it in an ineffective way, which leads to spending way too much time in air and thus equaling out to actually going slower. And in some cases, charging up a boost with a drift is way more effective anyway. And if that wasn't enough for you, keeping an eye open as you play, you'll notice there's a bunch of shortcuts throughout the game's tracks. Sure, some of the old Mario Kart tracks also had them, but not nearly as many and definitely not as creative as they are here. And speaking of old tracks, this is the first time the so-called retro tracks appear on home console, given they were on DS first. Nowadays, the retro tracks are complete remakes of older tracks, made to fit in with the current game's gimmick and such. In Wii, these retro tracks are more or less just straight ports with some asset changes and maybe a bit of texture cleanup boosting here and there. So even though one might call them primitive, I love that they're here in all their glory anyway. Regardless of what track you play on, you'll be sure to hear some of the most catchy music this series has ever produced. Producers Asuka Ota and Ryo Nagamatsu co-created most of the tracks in this game, and given Ryo was relatively new at the company at the time, it's quite an achievement how good the game's soundtrack is. And you should know, what you've been hearing throughout the whole video is music by these two legends. And as I love to share my favorite pieces of music, I want you to listen to my favorites from this game. See? It's pretty good, right? The turns feel sharp, the controls feel responsive, the maps are great, and the music is all around amazing. So why then do I say that this game not only looks bad, but also isn't my favorite? Well, to start with the elephant in the room, this game's graphical art style just looks bad. Mario Kart Wii not only looks bland and plastic in a way that not even the last game did, but also fails to live up to other Wii games standards. So hear me out before you get the pitchforks. The character models look very rough even compared to Double Dash, as it barely looks like there was any increase in polygon count. And taking things a step further and comparing the Wii model to the one in Mario Galaxy shows just how rough things are here. And before you say anything, yes, I know the tracks and the karts get the most resources, but the Wii could still do a lot better than this. And even if that doesn't bother you, taking a look at the game in motion reveals another issue for me. This game lacks vibrancy and looks bland, as I said earlier. Yeah, I can't quite put my finger on it, but the shading used here isn't my favorite. Focusing on the characters again reveals what I mean when I say plasticky. There's this unnatural shine to the characters, and combining that with the low poly model itself creates this really odd look, and I don't like it. And to clarify for those who might be confused, in this video you might have noticed the quality of the footage shift around a little. Well, this is because I have a mixture of footage directly captured from an unmodded Wii U, from a modded Wii that fixes some of the output settings, and finally from an emulator. While the shine itself is most noticeable on the emulator footage as you see, it still bothers me even on the most normal Wii U footage. Double Dash not only looked far more vibrant, but didn't suffer from the shading issue here. And that was last gen! Luckily though, after Mario Kart 8 came out, all worries about graphics were thrown out the window. I'm sorry, rant over. Now, I said I don't like this game as much as other Mario Karts, and there's two main reasons for why that is. First, as I mentioned earlier, I think the game could have played it a little less safe. From a gameplay standpoint, everything works and all, but I really think this was the first time the series didn't move forward in all aspects. And secondly, I think the item balancing, while fun for some people, lessens my enjoyment of the game given I'm a person with all-around terrible luck. I think this game precisely leans into the chaos a bit too much for my tastes. It's the same reason why I don't like Baby Park in Double Dash. In short, I don't like when things feel too much out of my control. So while the game itself is very fun and enjoyable and always will be a very important childhood game for me, I can't say it's my favorite when so much of the actual gameplay is spent being bombarded with items instead of racing. But I think you all know that isn't the end of it. You see, in Mario Kart Wii, every character and vehicle has specific stats, and that means there's a tier list. Oh god. Probably the most recognizable thing from this game is the undisputed #1 combo in the entire game. Funky Kong and the Bowser bike is something that is like a scar in my mind. Just about everyone plays using this combo nowadays, and I'm so tired of seeing it. And you know it's gonna go bad when the whole online lobby is filled with nothing but Funky Kong. So I just wanted to get that out of the way, cause while Funky Kong is cool as hell, I really wish more people played other characters. And I guess I didn't mention it, but you can also play as Mii characters now, so yay? They have weird voices though. Finally, one thing I want to mention before I talk about the battle mode is this new little option in the menu labeled VS Race. This is basically your custom race option, which includes a new mode, Team Race. Red vs Blue is the name of the game, and I don't get it, to be honest. There's nothing inherently more fun, I think, in racing as a team than solo. If anything, your team can drag you down even if you come in first place every race. So, alright, cool, teams are meh. But get this! In the battle mode, no matter which of the two modes you pick, it's only in teams! What?! So no matter what you do, you're stuck with teammates in battle mode. And there's no more Shiny Thief and no more Bomb Bomb Blast. But alright, we still have the tried and true Balloon Battle and newcomer Coin Runners. Balloon Battle is just as you'd expect it, only in teams for some reason. And as for Coin Runners, well, I wish there was more to say to be honest, but it really isn't that special. All you do is go around collecting coins on the playfield and every now and then hit opponents to have them drop their coins. The team with the most coins in the end wins, and that's that. And before anyone gets mad at me, it's not boring by any means. Both game modes work perfectly fine and are fun in their own way, even if you're stuck as a team. My issue here with the battle mode is, as you might have guessed, it's playing it a little too safe. And no, it's not that they removed the two amazing modes from Double Dash that makes me say this, although that also sucks. No, I just wish there was something truly new other than a slight variation of Balloon Battle. Oh well, at least the tracks for the battle mode are super good, just as the normal tracks are as well. Although, just as before, the retro tracks here leave a lot to be desired in comparison to the Wii ones. But it really doesn't bother me that much here. Lastly, a thing I've never mentioned in any of the earlier videos is time trial, given it's such a basic mode, but seeing as I want to make sure to cover everything here, let's take a look, shall we? In time trial, the goal is to race through a course as fast as possible all on your own, and the only items available are 3 mushrooms you get from the start. How and when you use them is up to you. And the one new thing this game added was the ability to upload your ghost data for others to challenge if they wish to. And as we're on the subject, one of the coolest Easter eggs is that the developers left their own ghost data for each of the tracks, so if you're feeling daring, try and challenge them. And having said that, I feel satisfied wrapping things up. You know, looking back at this game after all this time, it makes me a bit emotional. And yes, I know I always say that, but screw you, I cry a lot. It's honestly impressive how big of an impact this game made. Even though it's not my favorite, its legacy still lives on, and for what it's worth, it's fun knowing that just about everyone has played this at some point in their lives. The motion controls, while gimmicky, were cool, the music was amazing, and the feel of the game was just right. So make no mistake, even if the game visually isn't to my liking, it is still one of the best and most important games of its generation. Mario Kart Wii was, and still is, a blast. Truly worthy of the title, the most chaotic Mario Kart. So even if that whole statement was a bit cheesy, I just hope you enjoyed watching this as much as I had making this. So before ending things off, remember to subscribe and like the video, as well as share your best memory with Mario Kart Wii down below in the comments. See you all next time on the Mario Kart Retrospective with Mario Kart 8 and 8 Deluxe.
Hello there people, my name is Benjamin, or Bend for short, and welcome back to the Mario Kart Retrospective, the series of videos that may or may not piss off the entire Mario Kart community. Today we talk about the very latest Mario Kart that I'm sure you're pretty tired of hearing about, cause we've essentially been playing the same Mario Kart for a decade, a literal decade. But before talking about the actual game, let me just say thank you for the amazing response to the earlier videos in this series, especially the Wii episode. I can't really put it into words how happy it made me seeing the overwhelming positive response to that video, so from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And because of all of this, I decided that this video should be a lot less scripted in the sense that I usually do, letting you hear more of my silly yet sorta entertaining side. So to start with, let's get one question out of the way. Is this a video about 8 or 8 Deluxe? The answer is both, but mainly Deluxe, given it's the definitive edition. So as is tradition, let's roll a little intro thing. For this video, I'll go over my personal experience with the game mostly, but I'll briefly touch upon the wider community every now and then. And since everyone seems to love splitting their videos into chapters, I'll do that here as well. So, Chapter 1, the new editions. The last game I covered here on the channel was Wii, and a lot has happened between 2008 and 2014. So fair warning, a lot of the new stuff I mention here stems from Mario Kart 7 originally. So why not begin with the most notable addition coming in the form of the graphics? Cause any way you slice this shit, this is an incredibly pretty game even on the old Wii U. And that just goes to show you how much art style matters instead of chasing photorealism. And while I remain salty to this day that this game still isn't as vibrant as Double Dash, at some point even I and the other dumbasses need to admit that this is by far the best looking Mario Kart.
And most of you probably don't even know what the hell a Wii U is, so here it is. This is the console Nintendo released in between the Nintendo Wii and the Switch. So think of it as the awkward middle child that sold incredibly poorly, but still managed to capture just about like 18 million people's hearts. Cause man, this is Nintendo's absolute worst selling console with some of the greatest games actually. And you should know, cause most of them are on the Switch right now. But, you know, despite its reputation, despite most of the hate it gets nowadays for both performance and questionable marketing decisions, I really love it. And if you've been a fan of the channel for a long time, you should know, because one of my first, like, major popular videos was my retrospective of the Wii U. And today it might be a little bit outdated, but I wouldn't be against doing like a remake of that, so if you're up for something like that, leave a comment down below and I'll be sure to consider the idea.
Otherwise, if we're talking about the actual game, then gliding and driving underwater as well as being able to drive on walls and upside down with the anti-gravity wheel thing comes to mind as the newest additions. I really like one of those things, but the other two, nah. Gliding is such a natural addition, and it's genuinely pretty fun. Although if you think about the physics for it all, it probably doesn't make much sense. But I mean, what does, I guess? You're already throwing shells and bananas at overgrown monkeys, so... Driving underwater does nothing for me. It's the exact same thing as driving on land, except for a few physics changes. And driving on walls... Okay, who asked for this? This might be a bit of an unpopular opinion, but I really never ever found this gimmick all that interesting. I might be old school and weird here, but I'd rather have multiple paths be done like it is in the Ninja Hideaway stage. You know, driving up that random stairway, pretty cool. Gliding to a higher level, also pretty cool. Driving on a wall for seemingly no reason. I'd rather not. Summarize the whole anti-gravity thing for me feels like change for the sake of change rather than an evolution or something substantially different. But that reminds me, this is a Nintendo problem in general. Take the #1 victim of that being Star Fox. Nintendo, or rather Miyamoto I guess, really hates evolving an established piece of gameplay unless it also does something completely different. Doesn't matter if it's good or bad, change apparently has to happen. Thus, Star Fox Zero happened. And yes, I still like that game cause I got used to the controls, but does that mean that's how the game ideally should have been played? No. And while this isn't nearly as severe here with Mario Kart, as far as I see, the anti-gravity thing really adds nothing to the gameplay, but it's different at least, so I guess Miyamoto got the last laugh anyway. Another addition from 7 making its return is the kart customization. This is a really cool addition and always something I enjoyed. Karts are now split into 3 categories, being the actual kart itself, the wheels and the glider. And each of them affects stats in different ways, so for once you can make that dream vehicle that works best for you. And if that wasn't enough, bikes return here as well, only now without that overpowered wheelie thing, so what we're left with is the main difference, being that they drift a bit differently. So, oh yeah, and coins from the first Mario Kart also return after also returning in 7, but let's not break the hype. Otherwise, it's the usual. A few new items here and there, a terrible battle mode in 8 that thankfully was fixed in Deluxe, and I guess now the largest amount of tracks in any other Mario Kart, thanks to the DLC. So in short, there's a lot of stuff here. You know, characters, tracks, customization, smart steering BS that you probably should turn off if you have any self-respect. And it's almost like the game is a bit too perfect for its own good. And while that sounds strange and maybe even silly to some of you people, I feel like Nintendo is at its best when it does the more quirky stuff like the whole GameCube era itself. But part of me also wonders if this might just be a remnant of the whole Wii U era where everything felt a bit too safe. But by now you should know that a game being safe doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. So let's move on to the meat and potatoes of this thing. Chapter 2, the gameplay. Is anyone surprised that I say that this is literally the best controlling Mario Kart ever? No? I think so. I mean, we're way past the days of sliding around like an ass after trying to drift and such, so we've come a long way! The game is nice and easy to pick up and play all the way from 50 to 150cc. Although 200cc does not feel nice, I don't care what you say, none of the tracks are designed to be played at 200, so while you can, why would you? Ever played a Pokemon game on an emulator where you speed up the game and then fail over and over when trying to walk into a building? That's 200cc. For once, the item balancing feels just right. I think the addition of coins as an item really helps break the cursed banana and green shell combo first place has known for years. Otherwise, the Fire Flower is pretty nice as a new addition from 7, same as the Crazy 8, which really just replaces the Lucky 7. Which means that whenever Mario Kart 9 shows up, we're almost certainly getting some kind of 9 item thing. But if you're asking me, which I assume you do if you're watching this, then I think the biggest improvement 8, and by definition 8 Deluxe as well, made upon the controls themselves is the drifting and handling improvements. And while that might sour some people's sick sense of hard-to-master gameplay itch, I don't see anything wrong with it. But then in this whole package we have the low point of the game being the anti-gravity thing, as I mentioned before, because wow, that's such a boring gimmick. Yeah, I miss the days when we got unique stuff like in Double Dash, and even speaking upon the whole anti-gravity thing, other games like Sonic Riders Zero Gravity did that whole concept a whole lot better anyway. Maybe this is me being weird, I mean, it's not the first time, but I still can't let it go. Anyway, as we've touched upon how it feels to play the game, let's move on to what's become my favorite part of these videos, and that's Chapter 3, the tracks. Remember how I said that Mario Kart Wii had some of the best tracks in the entire series? Well, while that's still true, Mario Kart 8 has it beaten because it pretty much has all of the good tracks from that game anyway. And it's here that I want to bring up the fact that the tracks in the base game of 8, you know, before all of the DLCs, were pretty boring. But after the first wave of DLC, which not only added 2 cups, also opened up the series to more than just Mario characters. You know, I finally got my boy Link, so you know I was happy. So it shouldn't come as a surprise then that when 8 Deluxe got even more DLC in the form of the Booster Course Pass, which includes 48 more tracks. It's pretty hard to beat this game in terms of tracks. I mean, you can't lose if you have every stinking track ever made, or at least every track that people care about, I guess. And for the record, Ninja Hideaway is currently my favorite track in 8 Deluxe, with Yoshi's Island in second. So if anything, that should speak to the quality of the DLC tracks. Basically, there is something for everyone. Which also goes for the sound, because as usual, the sound effects and music really are top notch. The menu even does that cool thing where it adds more instruments the deeper you go. I guess I forgot to mention that Wii also does that, huh? And one of my favorite but kinda pointless additions is that some of the tracks even got special after race songs and intro sequences. Gotta love hearing the roost in a Mario Kart game. Perfect for crying. Which you'd probably do if you've played the original battle mode in 8. Also, Chapter 4, the battle mode. Upon the release of Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U, the battle mode was a bit lacking. And that's to say, my god, this was ass. You know, the old games had various different modes. To everyone's surprise then, Mario Kart 8 launched with only Balloon Battle. And that's also on top of the fact that there was no real battle mode stages, instead opting for reused normal tracks, which you can imagine didn't work out that well. Although teams from Wii also returned as an option if you really wanted to.
It just feels like I'm looking for people the majority of the time. And then when I finally find them, they just kind of run away. So, I don't know. Oh, there's Daisy. Oh, okay, bye. Oh, there's Metal Mario again. I guess we're going around here. Eventually find some. Wait, could that be actually? No. Oh, no. Okay. Oh, no, shit. Rosalina. No, no. Okay, she left. Oh, Wario. Oh my god, we actually got someone for one. Jeez. Oh, hey. No!
In Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, then, this was all fixed. Literally all of it. Deluxe brought in 5 brand new battle mode maps and 3 retro ones. It also brought back actual modes outside of Balloon Battle. My beloved Bomb Bomb Blast and Shine Thief returned from Double Dash. Even Coin Runners from Wii made its way here. And to top it all off, there's a new mode called Renegade Roundup, which is basically a cop and thief kind of game. AKA, one team, being the thieves, tries to run away from the cops and so on. No other Mario Kart has such an incredible battle mode, let alone such an interesting development history. Going from the absolute worst battle mode in the series to pretty much the best is no small feat. And that also conveniently applies to the online battle mode, cause hey, online is pretty reliable now. Chapter 5, Online Play. Playing online was always something I really enjoyed in both DS and in Wii, although even at the time the system itself was a bit primitive. But later on, with 7 and 8, the system was way more modernized with the introduction of communities and later on tournaments. This naturally expanded the social aspect of the game for people like me trying to interact with their audiences. And while that's great and all, I'm genuinely confused as to why we still cannot even vote on any stage we want when playing online, nor can we even filter the online play with only DLC or not. I mean, would it be so bad to have a system like the preferred rules in Smash Bros. Ultimate? Otherwise, there's not really anything that I have to complain about, given that the performance is quite literally perfect for 99% of the time. As for the rest of the video, I don't really know how to categorize it more than I already have, so instead let's dive into my final thoughts about basically everything else. Chapter 6, Final Thoughts. Around 2013, I was busy playing Mario Kart 7 on my 3DS. I played time trials just about every night and I really had a blast. But later on in the year, when Mario Kart 8 got its first trailer, something changed. The game initially didn't capture my interest, cause in my eyes it looked more like a 7 HD. And because of that initial reaction to the game, it took me a while to even get the game even after it was released. But even after I got the game, it wasn't really as I usually do it. Because normally I try and buy all of my Nintendo games physically. Even so, Mario Kart 8 remains the one and only I ended up going digital for. And for me, that's a huge thing. And sure, it sounds silly to most of you probably, but for me it really signifies how little I cared for the game at first. And even later when the DLC came, sure, it was nice, but it didn't hold my attention for very long. But later on, when 8 Deluxe came out, I really bounced back and started to appreciate the game for what it actually was. I mean, sure, it wasn't perfect, but it was a hell of a lot better than what I remembered. And later on, when 8 Deluxe got its own DLC in the form of the Booster Course Pass, things got even better. So you can kinda see how the game itself got better and better as time moved on for me. And a fun fact here, I guess. When I first got my recording equipment all those years ago, the game I chose to record was Mario Kart 8. So I guess because of that, this game holds some sentimental value, given it's kinda related to the channel's development history, so to say. So after all is said and done, I really like both of the games, although obviously 8 Deluxe a bit more. It's not my favorite by any means, but if it happens to be yours, then all the more power to you. Remember that my complaints are formed out of my perspective and history with the franchise. And with that, I think I've gotten pretty much everything that I wanted to say about this game out into the open. Instead, I want to hear what you think of this game. Do I have a point in anything, or am I just completely stupid? Well, it's up to you. And before we end things off, I really want to thank you once again for the continued support, because nothing, and I really mean nothing, makes me happier than seeing the fun comments that these videos get. And finally, yes, this is the last part in the Mario Kart retrospective for quite a while, given I'll tackle the handhelds a bit later. Now, if you're anything like me, aka being a Nintendo fan, I urge you to stay around, because you won't want to miss what comes next. Thank you all, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.